All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes Live. It's Thursday evening, 6 o'clock Central Time. Today was a good day. We got 23 days until Texas football. That's exciting. The days seem to be just rattling off good, man. I remember I started doing some countdown stuff on Twitter, and we were up in the 50s. We're doing good. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, all at Horn Takes. I appreciate it. Please subscribe. You can subscribe to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's Horn Takes Podcast. You can search for it on Buzzsprout. Subscribe to it there as well. I'd appreciate it. Big news today. Colin Simmons announces his commitment to the University of Texas. Really big get for Texas. You look at what Steve Sarkisian has tried to do since he got to the University of Texas. You look at what he said, the things he's done. It's all been sitting around building a roster that can go into the SEC and be able to physically compete for an SEC schedule, an entire SEC schedule. And thank God he had some time to do it, because the roster wasn't ready to do it when he got to the University of Texas. And his main point of emphasis was along the offensive and defensive line. You can look at all his classes since he's got here, and they're full of really good offensive linemen, really good defensive linemen, really good edge rushers. Steve Sarkisian spent enough time in the SEC with a very good Alabama team under a very, very good head coach to understand that you win and lose those football games up front. Not to take away anything from the skill guys, not to take anything away from, your back seven on defense, but you're really going to win the game up front. And this was a huge step, again, in a positive direction for the University of Texas, and continuing to layer that kind of talent onto their roster, into their roster. It's a possible domino effect as well, man. Colin Simmons said it a few weeks ago. He wants to, wherever he commits, he wants other 5-stars to come play with him. And I think that is something it'll be interesting to see how actively he starts to recruit some of these prospects, some of these guys that Texas is still looking at. And it's really a lot of 5-stars and a lot of really high 4-stars sitting out there that Texas is just kind of waiting on to commit. I'm interested to see how Colin Simmons goes out and tries to get some of those guys to come to Texas. I think Colin Simmons gets real active on the recruiting trail, the Twitter recruiting trail, and then I think you can feel really good about this commitment as a Texas fan. I think another thing it does, landing Colin Simmons, is you keep one of the state's top guys and the top prospect at a position of need. You keep that guy in state and you keep him away from Texas A&M. I think that's big. Texas A&M has been on a pretty rabid recruiting jaunt, tour. I don't know what you would call it. They've been kicking ass on the recruiting trail for a couple years now. A lot of really good players joined Texas A&M last year. They had that historic, never been seen before recruiting class. And so I think it's a big deal that Steve Sarkisian was able to win a head-to-head battle against an SEC team that had a really good season last year, and a lot of people expect a lot from them. I mean, I think if you're an LSU fan, the program's looking up. You got to feel like you're building towards something as an LSU fan right now. Really good first year for Brian Kelly. And he was able to fend off in-state rival Texas A&M. So, again, huge get for Texas. Now the key is, can you keep him? Can you get him to sign in December? This recruitment, we talked about it on Tuesday. On the show Tuesday, we did a whole segment on just kind of his announcement that was coming up, and we talked about how crazy this recruitment has been, just with the fact that nobody, it just seemed like nobody knew what was going on. And in the final days, it got even more crazy. Nobody knew what was going on. I saw a tweet this afternoon after the commitment, actually this morning before the commitment, that said, I've heard from a good source, and this is paraphrasing, I've heard from a good source that even the coaching staffs do not know where Colin Simmons is going to commit to today. And this was just a couple hours before he was actually committing. So you had all these analysts, these national recruiting guys and these site recruiting guys all feeling confident, both coaching staffs feeling confident. As I was watching the coverage before they actually went to the announcement, 247 was doing, just some, hey, these are the two guys that are committing, and we've got some guys to talk about them. Steve Whitfong was on there. Both of the analysts they had on there were talking about how both teams, as of last night, thought they were in good shape. So Colin Simmons, and the interesting thing is, you'll have a lot of guys that sort of game the recruiting system, so to speak. They really like the attention and all that. I don't really feel like, it didn't really seem like, I never got annoyed by anything Colin Simmons was doing. I just thought he was just trying to make a really tough decision. I was thinking about it, man, as I was watching those two kids. By the way, Caden Durham, his teammate, commits to LSU. I think that was pretty well expected by most people, except for OU fans. But I was watching those two guys, do their announcement, go through their little speeches, thank all the people in their lives. And I got to thinking about when I was that age. Just, man, that would have been so crazy to be getting recruited like that. And just have all this pressure, and all these people know who you are, and there's all these people on Twitter. I mean, I bet those guys get like 1,000 notifications a day on Twitter. Surely they've had to turn them off. Like, I'm OCD. I can't see all those little red bubbles. I'd lose my freaking mind. I have to not have bubbles. And I think we as fans, and especially fans that really follow recruiting, and, fan is short for fanatic. I say that all the time. So fans say a lot of dumb shit and do a lot of dumb shit. That's just kind of the nature of being a fan, right? I think we forget sometimes that these dudes are a lot of these guys are just 17 years old. And take yourself back to when you were 17. Man, So anyway, I thought they both did a great job, announcing where they were going to go to school. The hat fake is a thing that always happens these days, and I thought his hat, he had me going on his hat fake for a minute. So for those of you that didn't see it, his teammate who chose LSU just before he announced where he was going to commit walks over with an LSU hat that he put on. So Colin Simmons puts the LSU hat on, and everybody, it's real quiet in the room. Then he takes it off, grabs a Texas hat, a burnt orange one, puts it on. And then he takes it off and puts it down, and then he looks at his little brother and says, "Give me that right there." And he pulls a white Texas hat out, and I was like, whew, thank God. At that point, I was thinking, because I made a joke on the show on Tuesday, how crazy would it be if he picks Miami? You know, everybody's all LSU and Texas. And by the way, Miami coaches thought they could be in a decent position as early as just a couple of days ago. So he really played it close to the vest, and I think he enjoyed it. We'll just have to see how it turns out. A commitment is not a signing. So we kind of have to ride out the next few months, but it's good for Texas fans that he's chosen Texas. Steve Wilfong tweeted earlier this afternoon, just a few minutes ago, that he had a source tell him that what it ultimately came down to and why he chose Texas was that Sark was the head coach at Texas and the relationship he's built with Sark, and he didn't have a decision made until last night. But again, beware Texas fans. I said it on Tuesday. This one could go to December, no matter which school he chooses. But I think if he starts going out there and starts actively recruiting people to Texas and all the buzz shuts down whatsoever, and he can shut all that down. He can just say, "Coach, I appreciate it. I'm going to Texas. It's not happening. Not coming to LSU. Not coming to Miami. I'm going to Texas." And I think they'll still check in with him, but it won't be the full court press he's going to get if he doesn't do that, or if he isn't actively out there recruiting for Texas. So I think the next few weeks will be kind of interesting to see how this commitment's going to ride out, and whether it really is. And I'm not questioning him. I don't know him at all. But you see it, guys will commit, and then they flip, and just kind of the nature of the game. This commitment moves Texas up to 17 in the team rankings. They had been down, I think, like in the sort of high 20s. So a pretty big jump. And there's a lot of guys on deck, man. There's 5-star defensive tackle out of Louisiana. There's a 4-star cornerback out of Louisiana. There's a 5-star cornerback out of Texas. 5-star wide receiver out of Missouri. So there's a lot of targets out there with big numbers next to their names. I had done a video right after the combine. I don't know if it was a video or if it was probably in my show. I was talking about DeMarvion Overshone and his low bench press rep number. I think he did 15 or 16 reps at the combine of 225. And I said, and I posted this on TikTok, I said, I'm almost 46 years old, and I guarantee you I can go to the gym right now and do 20 reps on bench press. And I had a couple people call me on it, and I meant to do it, and I didn't do it. But in celebration of this commitment by Colin Simmons, I'm going to shoot a video probably Monday. Monday is the day I do bench press at the gym. I'm going to shoot a video Monday of me rocking out 20 reps on bench press, and it'll be my third set of 225. So just know that. I'll have done 2 sets of 12 with 225, and then I'll bust out 20 on my last set for you guys in celebration of Colin Simmons committing to the University of Texas. Doing our position group stuff. We're finally wound down to the last group. And we'll probably talk about special teams, but special teams isn't really a group. Defensive backs, here we go. Texas defensive backs have been, I think the defensive backfield at Texas has been poor for a pretty long time. And I think you could say that about a lot of position groups for the University of Texas. There were some guys, there were some guys that made it out and made it to the NFL, and have had decent NFL careers, but as far as a unit, the defensive backfields have been just really poor. And I can remember back in the early to mid 2000s, Texas was, certainly in the conversation for DBU. You had Michael Huff and Aaron Ross win the Thorpe Award in back-to-back years, 2005, 2006. Michael Griffin was a really good safety I'm pretty sure Michael Griffin was a finalist for the Thorpe Award at some point in his career. Had just a huge interception against USC in the national championship game. But it's been a long time since the University of Texas has had as much talent as they have in their defensive backfield. And I think this year's group is the first real glimpse of what Texas can be in the defensive backfield. They're loaded with talent. And the interesting thing, I don't guess it's interesting, these dudes are big. Steve Sarkisian has made no bones about it. He wants big defensive backs. And I'm not talking like stocky. I'm talking about tall guys with long frames that make it really hard to complete passes. And they're really physical at the point of attack. And they're really physical in press coverage. I don't think I've ever seen a Texas roster that has had this many guys in the defensive backfield that are 6 foot or better. And I think that's what you got to have. You've got these wide receivers today that are, who is it? I can't remember the team, but there's a team that's got like a 6'6" wide receiver. And a ton of teams have 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" guys that can run, they can jump. You can't trot out 5'8" cornerbacks anymore with alligator arms. It just doesn't work. It just physically doesn't work anymore. You'll see Texas play a lot of nickel in the defensive backfield. I think part of that is just PK's deal. That's what he wants to do. And I think the other part of it is you're playing in the Big 12, and the Big 12 is pretty pass happy. So if you got some of these hybrid type guys that you can move around, they almost act as a linebacker, but they can definitely get back in coverage. That confuses offenses, confuses offensive lines. PK really does a good job of utilizing his defensive backs in the pressure game. So they'll be in a nickel a lot. And I think you'll see it probably even more this year because of how thin we are at linebacker. I don't know today there's 3 guys in the linebacker group that you can just throw out there and say, yeah, we can run 4-3 anytime we want and have 4 on the back end. This defensive backfield is pretty experienced. But it's kind of not experienced playing together. So a lot of these guys are transfers, in other words. But let's break down who we think, what the starting lineup could look like, and we'll talk about who some of the guys are that may not be starters, but some guys that'll contribute. I think there's probably 10 guys in this Texas backfield, defensive backfield, that are gonna play a lot. They're comfortable with them. I think you started out with the Little Elm boys. Got the field corner, sophomore Terrence Brooks. He's a 6 foot plus guy, almost 200 pounds, really long arms, really good ball skills. Played a lot last season. He looks to be the starter at field corner this year. Boundary corner, senior Ryan Watts, transfer out of Ohio State, another big, tall, long guy. Honorable mention, all Big 12 guy last season. Field safety, I'm not 100% sure. I kind of think maybe the safeties will be interesting to see what happens. We'll talk a little more about why later, but I think maybe Keaton Crawford gets the nod. He's a senior. he's played quite a bit at Texas, but mostly on special teams. But I've seen some depth charts that have him at number 1. Boundary safety, Jaron Thompson, he's a senior. He was also an honorable mention Big 12 guy last season. Had a really good season. The guy I really like in this defensive backfield is the nickel, Jahdae Barron. Man, this guy has a nose for the ball. He's tied for 6th in Texas football history for number of non-offensive touchdowns. He's had a punt return for a touchdown, a fumble recovery for a touchdown, and an interception for a touchdown. So I think those might be your starting 5. And then you got the transfers. Gavin Holmes out of Wake Forest. I think he's probably in a battle with Terrence Brooks for that field corner. Jalen Catalon, I think he's probably in a battle with Jaron Thompson for that boundary safety position. What he brings is just a really physical safety. He's like a Roy Williams from Oklahoma type dude. Not tremendous in coverage, probably. But he knows what he's doing, and he likes to hit people, and he's good enough in coverage that you got to be perfect. Damn near close to perfect. Another guy at that safety position, Michael Taft, is a former walk-on. He just got a scholarship, I believe, a few weeks ago, so good for him. Congratulations on that. He's one of those dudes that he kind of reminds me maybe of Blake Gideon when he played at Texas. Blake Gideon was a 4-year starter at Texas, and Blake Gideon, and he's coached Blake Gideon now, by the way, and he coaches the DBs at the University of Texas. He got to campus, and everybody knew he was athletic, right? I mean, he's a good athlete, but again, back in that day, there's a lot of good defensive backs playing for the University of Texas, and all Blake Gideon did was come in and start for 4 years as a defensive back at Texas. Had some really big plays. Really solid guy, and I think that's who, if I have to make a comparison, that's who Michael Taft kind of reminds me of. He knows where to be. He understands. You know, a big part of playing defensive back is just knowing where you're supposed to be and understanding what to do in what types of situations, getting your body in the right position to make a play. And I think that's what Blake Gideon was pretty good at. I think that's what Michael Taft is pretty good at. I don't know if he'll play as much this year as he did last year. He played an awful lot last year. But he'll see the field. You got Jalen Gilbo, is a guy that was having a really good freshman year last year before he got hurt, missed the last 5 games due to injury. Derek Williams, another safety. One of the top players in Louisiana last year. Really high 4-star guy. Sark's mentioned him in fall camp pressers and said, man, this guy just gets it. He just knows how to play football. His IQ is high. He knows where to be. He's physical. Good coverage skills, good ball skills. I wouldn't be surprised if Derek Williams sees the field a lot. So it'll be kind of cool to see how these guys, like what shakes out with this season. Like if everybody stays healthy in this defensive backfield, how does it shake out? Another guy I mentioned, Malik Muhammad. Forgot to mention, rather. Freshman. He's a boundary cornerback. Big kid out of Dallas, South Oak Cliff. They're talking about him in fall camp. So again, that last recruiting class, the last couple of recruiting classes that Sark's brought in, and the guys that have held over from the Herman era have made it this far with Sark. A lot of good talent, a lot of really good players. And, again, what I like about them the best is there's no more midgets. There ain't no more small guys on this team that are going to get physically beat trying to get up and get the ball. These are big kids. They got wingspans. They will make it tough on people to just throw the football up and try to make plays. Question marks, can they gel? First of all, can they find out who the 4 or 5 guys are quickly? Ideally, you'd want to come out of fall camp and be like, this is what it looks like. This is what we know we're going to do. But I don't think they're going to be able to do that probably. And I think a lot of these guys are going to get to play and kind of get an opportunity to prove themselves. So we might see a whole lot of different combinations early on in the season. And once they settle on something, whenever point in the season that is, can they gel together? Can they come together? Can they trust each other? You know, all those things that, I mean, playing defensive back has got to be pretty rough, man. You have to trust that. You have to trust your teammates to know that you can just do your job. And I think that's where a lot of defensive backfields break down, is there's not trust there. And those guys, they try to do too much. They try to do more than just what the coaches are asking them to do, and that causes big plays. Can they get off the field on 3rd and long? My God. 3rd and long has been like a joke for Texas for so many years now. It would take so long to go through and like go through these games and figure out what that percentage looks like. And 3rd and long to me is like 3rd and 7 and beyond. 3rd and 8 and beyond, maybe. It'd be really cool if someone would take the years it would take to go through and just map all that out and just see what that percentage looks like for Texas on first downs given up on 3rd and long. We talked about it. I mean, after the Tech game, in the Tech game, there was 2 3rd and a quarter of the field that Tech converted. One they converted on an actual completion. The other was a pass interference. Got to get off the field on 3rd and long. That should be almost a given that you're getting off the field. And the crazy part is they do a really good job of forcing 3rd downs. I mean, the first 2 downs of a series for Texas defense last year were generally pretty damn amazing. And then on 3rd down, I don't know. I don't know if it was the scheme. I don't know if it was the players not playing inside of the scheme. I don't know. But they have to get better at that. Can they force more turnovers is question number 3. Texas was tied for 105th in the country last year with only 14 turnovers. 10 of those were interceptions, which isn't terrible. But there were teams last year that doubled that up easily. So our backfield has got to be able to produce more turnovers. And PK's talked about that all camp. You know, the defense has to call. We got to force more turnovers. We got to get the ball back for the offense. I think, to the defensive backs' credit and in fairness, the defensive line has to be better. The pass rush off the edge has to be better. That's another reason why a commitment like Colin Simmons is such a big deal for Texas. He's a guy that can step on campus day one and give you some pass rush. So Texas probably isn't ready to be DBU yet. But I think, again, Sark is starting to get the type of players that he needs to get to that point. And maybe we can be in the conversation again. Hell, maybe we can be in that conversation this year. We'll see. Week 8 opponent, Houston Cougars. Texas going to go on the road to face an old Southwest Conference foe and an old Big 12 coaching foe, Dana Holgorsen. Texas and Houston have played 25 times. Texas holds a 16-7-2 record against Houston. Texas on a 7-game winning streak in this series. Last meeting was 2002. Texas won that one 41-11. Last road game for Texas in this series was 2001. They won that game 53-26. I think this might be a little different Houston team, though, than those Houston teams. Houston was 8-5 last season, 5-3 in the American Athletic Conference, and that's the American Athletic Conference is a pretty good little league. I mean, it's not. I'm not trying to make them more than they are, but it's pretty competitive. Some good teams come out of that conference. Some teams in that conference give Power 5 teams a lot of trouble. So to me, this is no slam dunk type of a game for Texas. Houston has 9 returning starters, 5 on offense, 4 on defense. Key returners on offense, they do get 3 of their 5 offensive linemen back, or at least 3 guys that played a whole hell of a lot last year on the offensive line, and that's important. We talked about it, man. You win up front. You can take a team that maybe has just some decent skill guys, but if you block for them and you protect the quarterback, they can make plays. So they got tackle Patrick Paul back, guard Tyler Johnson, and center Jack Freeman back. They have 79 receptions for just a tick over 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns with wide receivers Samuel Brown and Matthew Golden coming back. Key returns on defense, it's really just a couple of edge guys. Chidozie and Wenko. Probably butchered that. I apologize, Chidozie. I might have butchered that too. And Nelson Caesar, 5 sacks between those guys. And Caesar was like a turnover machine last year. You look at his stat line, and it was like fumble, forced fumble, interception, pass block. Just like every freaking thing you could think of. This guy did it last season. The key losses are what is going to be bad for Houston. QB Clayton Tune, that's 4,000 plus yards of passing, 40 touchdowns. He only threw 10 interceptions. They did add Donovan Smith from Texas Tech. So I don't know what was on the roster before. I have to assume Donovan Smith, who started some games for Texas Tech last year. I kind of got to assume he's going to win that job. We'll find out. They lost just a shade under 1,000-yard back Alton McCaskill. 16 touchdowns for him on the ground. I mean, I think probably the big one from a wide receiver perspective, Nathaniel Dell, over 100 catches, almost 1,400 yards, and 17 touchdowns. So a lot of offensive production gone for the University of Houston. But, hey, it's Dana Holgorsen. I don't think Dana Holgorsen's ever had just a bad offense. I mean, I think he knows how to coach offense. He knows how to build an offense, and I think he knows how to prepare a quarterback to really just be a ball distributor. So I think I don't know if they'll have numbers like that next season, but I think Houston will be good on offense generally. Then they lost guard Cameron Johnson. Key losses on defense. They lost most of their back 7, I think. Sometimes it's hard to tell who was starters without going back and looking at everything, but they lost a whole lot of linebackers, whole lot of defensive backs that contributed. Looking at the outlook for this game, man, it's the game after the Red River Shootout. I think the Red River Shootout is always going to be an emotional game, whether you whether you barely win, barely lose, get your ass kicked, or kick the shit out of them. I think there's just a lot of emotion at play that week and that week leading up to the game and then playing the game. And it's hard. It's hard to fill that tank back up again. Talk about Donovan Smith, led Tech to an OT victory over Texas last year. I went back and looked at his numbers in that game. He only averaged like 5.9 yards per completion, but he threw the ball over 50 times in that game. So he really just kind of dink and dunked Texas to death in that game. I think if you're Texas, there's really only two keys to this game. You got to stay focused. You got to be focused the whole week leading up to this game. You have to be prepared to go play a football game. You got to show up and be ready. And then I think you got to kind of weather the storm. Dana Holgerson's a Mike Leach disciple. He knows how to get points up on the board quick. I mean, how many times did we see Texas Tech when Mike Leach was there just like run up 14, 21 points in a flash on somebody? Holgerson's got that in him. So I think early on the road, in a place that, Houston fans hate Texas, always have. They'll show up for this one because it's probably the last chance they'll get to play them in a while. Definitely the only time they'll play as Big 12 foes. So it's kind of an interesting little game, honestly. But I think the Houston Cougar faithful will rally around this game, and I think they'll be excited for this game. I know the players are going to be excited. So it'll have to be one of those deals where you show up and you either have to do something really quick to like shut that up and put them in a position where they just feel like we can't win now, or you just have to kind of weather that, get through that early surge, that first quarter basically, and then after that you settle in and do what you need to do. I'm not going to do a score prediction or a win-loss prediction. I do think Texas should win this game. But we'll talk more about it leading up to game week as we really get a chance to see both teams. Random college football thoughts for the day. There's been a lot of them. One of the most ridiculous things I think I've ever seen. And don't get me wrong, folks. Texas fans, there are bad fans in all fan bases. And what I'm about to say, I can only say and honestly say about just a few people probably. There's probably a lot of great LSU fans out there right now that are saying best of luck to Colin Simmons. Texas will see you guys whenever we see you. But there are some out there, fans, insiders, just swimming in hypocrisy about NIL. I got in my first Twitter fight last night. I don't like to do that, but I got in a Twitter fight last night with a bunch of LSU fans. Someone posted like an excerpt from one of the LSU moderators on one of their message boards. And all he was talking about was NIL this, NIL that. The NIL deal must have been too big for Texas. Da-da-da-da-da. And I just made a little tweet. I said it isn't an interest, and this is all paraphrased. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was basically like, isn't it interesting that a school that built a powerhouse baseball team that won the College World Series this year with NIL is complaining about losing one recruit to a school in football because of NIL. And boy, did they jump my shit. And the funny thing is, they kept wanting to say how many of these players were transfers. I didn't say anything about transfer portal. I said NIL. So yeah, I had about an hour-long argument with LSU fans. I think we made good with the sensible ones. I followed a lot of them because I have a really good feeling that LSU and Texas are going to end up being pretty hostile towards each other in the SEC. It just seems that way to me. And I mean, that makes sense. I've always kind of wondered why LSU and Texas haven't played more. They're really close to each other. And then, of course, today, the Twitter meltdown after Colin Simmons chooses Texas. Just pathetic, guys. I mean, come on. Folks attacking Texas any way they can, saying Colin Simmons making big mistake, talking about Coach Sarkisian and his alcohol problem. Just really low blow chicken shit crap out of LSU fans the last few days. Which, I mean, it doesn't really bother me. I just don't understand why adults want to act like that. Regardless, there's 1 down, 2 to go to drive LSU fans completely off a fucking cliff. If Texas can figure out a way to land Dominic McKinley, the number 1 defensive tackle out of Louisiana, he's a 5-star, and cornerback Wardell Mack, if that happens, LSU fans are going to go straight nosedive off of a cliff, and it's going to be hilarious. Like, maybe they'll do the Untold Story documentary of that. I think LSU fans just don't like Texas, period, man, because during the College World Series, you know, after at the College World Series when Texas was out of it at this point, you know, I was still keeping up with the baseball games and doing TikTok videos and keeping my show going. We were talking about what was going on at the College World Series. And they just did not. Man, one of them said they were the mecca of college baseball, and I just pointed out that that's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. And they jumped my ass, man. Hard. It is what it is. I don't mind having a rivalry with LSU. I think that'd be fun. But keep it above the belt, LSU fans. There's no need to go after like a 17-year-old kid because he didn't choose your school. There's no need to go after Texas's head coach in a personal manner. Talk about his coaching all you want. Talk about his record all you want. That's all fair play. Texas fall camp. Some news out of the fall camp. This morning, it was reported that Sadir Mitchell had an injury at Tuesday's practice, and he was going to get an MRI. Well, then this afternoon, it was reported that his lower leg injury was just minor, and he was back in practice today. So I was worried about that one. Sadir Mitchell has been a guy that, first of all, he's a freshman out of New Jersey. Big kid. He came in weighing 340, something like that. He's down to 318, 320, something like that. So he's done some work on his body since coming to Texas. And he's like one of those big space eating type dudes that will just chew up blocks and make life for linebackers a joy, right? And he was doing pretty well in fall camp. They were talking about him. You know, Sadir Mitchell's having a good camp so far. And I think he's the type of dude that can get in there immediately, at least on a rotational basis, and help you out. So besides the fact that I'm happy for him that he didn't get hurt, like how big of a punch in the nuts would that be? You get to college, you're all excited, you're going through your first fall camp, and something really bad happens. You get a terrible leg injury that puts you out for the season, or even if it's just for a few weeks, that sucks because that puts you behind. It's hard to recover from that, from like a playing time perspective, and certainly a experience perspective. So I'm happy for him, but I'm also happy for Texas football that he's available. You know, one of the things that's kind of got us the last couple years in fall camp has been some pretty serious injuries. So I'm hoping that we can stay injury-free through fall camp and bring all of our guys to the field to play Rice on September 2nd. Also, a report out of camp was that Worthy got banged up in practice Tuesday, and they held him out of practice on Thursday. Nothing serious. I don't know what banged up means. I put that in quotes. I don't know what that is. Hurt somehow. Definitely don't want to get that dude hurt. Although, again, the wide receiver room at Texas is pretty freaking loaded. I mean, I feel like, nothing against Xavier Worthy, but I feel like maybe a Jonte Cook could step in and do Xavier Worthy stuff. Big Alfred Collins. I've been talking about Alfred Collins off and on for like almost a year now. I started this podcast the week after the Red River Shootout last year. And I know I've had a segment about Alfred Collins at least 3 or 4 times. For those of you, like, Alfred Collins is just this beast of a dude. He was a 5-star out of high school, got to Texas, had an all right, first year, and then he had a breakout year in the bowl game against Colorado. Breakout game, rather, in the bowl game against Colorado. And everybody's like, holy shit, like, Alfred Collins has arrived, folks. He's a 6'5", 315-pound kid, and he does not look like he weighs 315 pounds. He looks like a defensive end or something. Like, like one of these cheetah-looking dudes, one of these Ferrari-looking type guys. He doesn't look like a dump truck like most defensive tackles look like. Apparently, word out of camp is he's doing really well. Like, maybe the lights come on. I've said that before. If the light comes on for this dude, physically, he's an NFL football player. He just has to figure out mentally how to continue to be consistent. And word out of camp is that's happening. We'll see. I would love it. I would love to see it. I'm rooting hard for Alfred Collins because, like I said, I think that guy could go on and have an NFL football career. Another guy folks are talking about, Jaden Blue. Jaden Blue had that really good run in the spring game that kind of, he showed you speed, he showed you power, he showed you shiftiness, kind of everything in one, wrapped up in one run, 132, 33-yard run. Jaden Blue showed you what he had. And apparently he's been having a really good fall camp. It's going to be hard for Sark to keep all these running backs off the field. I did hear that Savion Red's a guy I'm really high on. He was a freshman last year, played receiver, played some slot last year, but they moved him to running back. I think he's a hothead. It sounds like he's a hothead. I didn't notice this during the bowl game last season, but apparently he had a moment on the sidelines last season, and then he's had a couple moments supposedly in fall camp this year. He's a really, really good talent, man. Hopefully Steve Sarkisian, actually some of the moderators, some of the analyst guys on Horns 247 kind of liken him to Ramonce Taylor, who's just outstanding at Texas for the short time he was there. When we broke down the offensive line, we talked about that interior being sort of the weak spot of that offensive line last year. And we talked about maybe DJ Campbell moving into that right guard position and Cole Hudson moving from that right guard position, which he started at as a true freshman last year, all season, moving over to take some reps at center away from Jake Majors. And by the way, Jake Majors is on the Remington Award watch list. I'm not sure I agree with Jake Majors being on the Remington Award watch list, but he is. And a sophomore is taking half the reps at center. And DJ Campbell's taking half of that sophomore's reps at center, at right guard. So I'm interested to see what happens there. I think DJ Campbell is a plus guy in the run game. He may not be where he needs to be in the pass game, and I think that's what will keep him off the field if he doesn't make it on the field. Steve Sarkisian said it. There is always an open competition. We're not doing the you started there last year, you're going to start there this year thing, which I am a huge fan of. Make those guys earn it every single year. Make them earn it every single week. Brett McMurphy. I don't know who Brett McMurphy is. I had to look him up on Twitter. I mean, I actually saw him on Twitter. I saw a tweet of his, and I was like, what the hell is this? So I had to go look at his bio on Twitter. He's apparently America's college football insider on like Action Headquarters Sports News Station. Or I don't know what the hell he is. I know he's a verified dude on Twitter. He has like almost 300,000 followers. But I think he might have he's an AP voter. I think he might have just put out like legitimately the most ridiculous top 25 that's ever been put out. When I first saw it, I thought, I don't know who Brett McMurphy is. And there's a lot of guys on Twitter that kind of pose as these important sports guys, but they're really just in it for the laughs. You know, they're just, it's like a joke, right? I thought, man, there is no way this is real. This guy has to be a troll. So again, I check out his bio and he's not a troll. He's like he's a legit AP voter, which is scary. You remember when the AP had anything to do with who won the national championship? Like college football, the NCAA let a bunch of writers, a lot of whom have never played the game and probably don't know much about the intricacies of the game, decide who won the national championship. Or there was a formula that took into account the fact that we were going to allow their votes to count towards who got to play for the national championship. How many wrongs have been created by Brett McMurphy back in the AP days? I don't know if he was a voter back then, but I don't know how that works. I don't know how long you get to keep your vote, and if they reevaluate that every year. I'm not really sure. I should look that up. But anyway, we'll go through his top 25 just so you can hear it, and then we'll go through and talk about all the things that are completely stupid about this top 20. Well, maybe not all the things, but the ones that sort of popped out at me. So here's this guy's top 25. Number 1, UGA, no big deal there. Number 2, Michigan. Number 3, Florida State. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 5, Alabama. Number 6, LSU. Number 7, Washington. Number 8, Penn State. Number 9, Oregon. Number 10, Clemson. Number 11, Texas Tech. Number 12, Notre Dame. Number 13, Oregon State. Number 14, USC. That's the real USC. Sorry, South Carolina fans. The USC on the West Coast. Number 15, Tennessee. Number 16, Louisville. Number 17, Ole Miss. 18, North Carolina. 19, UCLA. 20, Texas. 21, Tulane. 22, Utah. 23, Wisconsin. 24, Auburn. And 25, Illinois. So that's this guy's top 25. He literally turned that ballot in for the first AP preseason top 25 for 2023. So I'll just kind of go down. I mean, I think Florida State is like way too high. I understand that people feel like they're going to be a better team this year. There's even some people that think they're a dark horse for the playoffs. But man, I don't know how you put Florida State that high. I think they're top 10. Like if you would have just put them at 10, 9, 8 maybe. 3 seems way too high. I feel like Ohio State should be above them. Alabama should probably be above them. I think Oregon's too high. I think people are putting way too much stock in this Bo Nix thing. Bo Nix is still Bo Nix. He's just playing in the Pac-12 now instead of the SEC. I'm pretty sure Georgia last season to open the season, like, destroyed Bo Nix. I think LSU is too high. I don't get it. I mean, I understand they're a good team. They got a good quarterback. They had some good wins last year. They also got their dicks knocked in the dirt by Texas A&M, a 7-loss team. They also lost to Florida State. I'm cool with Washington. I'm cool with Penn State, I think, where they're at. And I think Washington's probably going to have a pretty good team. That Penix is really good. Texas Tech at 11 is like the stupidest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. I've said it 100 times on this podcast, this show. I like Coach McGuire. I think Coach McGuire is awesome. I think what he's doing out there at Tech is positive. But there is no fucking way Tech is going to be an 11th ranked team in the country this season. It ain't happening. There is too much hype for Texas Tech and winning the Big 12. It's like they're trying to will it to happen. You know how, like, people say if you say it, it'll happen. If you say it enough, it'll happen. That's what people are trying to do with Texas Tech being really good this year. And I think they'll be pretty good. I mean, they were 8-5 last year. I think they'll be – you don't want to play them. I think that's true. You definitely don't want to play them in Lubbock. But 11 is stupid. Oregon State, I have no idea almost why they're even ranked at all. They beat Florida. Big fucking deal. Florida had like 12 players on that team last year when they went and played Oregon State in the bowl game. I think USC is low. I think as long as USC has Caleb Williams, USC is definitely a top 10 team. I'm cool with Tennessee at 15. Tennessee is in the top 10. I think they're 9th. Maybe they're 10th in the coaches poll, and I think that's too high. They lost a lot on offense, and their defense was hot garbage last year. I got to ask, why is Louisville even on this top 25? Why is Ole Miss even on this top 25? Why is UCLA in the top 25? Why is UCLA on anybody's top 25? Why? I'm cool with where Texas is at on here. I mean, Texas is 12 in the coaches poll, and I talked on the show Tuesday when we talked about the coaches poll. I was like, prove it to me at this point. Like, you can be ranked wherever you're ranked. Prove it. So I'm cool with Texas. I think Texas is a top 20. I think if you don't have Texas in your top 25, then you're stupid. But they could be anywhere in that top 25, and I would say that makes sense. Except maybe not like top 5 or something like that. Anywhere from 25 to 10 for sure. Like, I think you could say, you could argue for Texas on that. Illinois, don't understand why they're on there. And then I think aside from the ones that are included, I think maybe the omissions are the ones that make absolutely the least sense. Where the fuck is TCU? TCU just played for the national championship last year. And now they're not a top 25. I mean, I know they lost a lot. Like, don't get me wrong. They lost some key pieces from a player perspective and from a coaching perspective. But good God, you can't. They're not a top 25 team. Where is Kansas State? Kansas State won the Big 12 last year. They're not a top 25 team. I'm okay with Oklahoma not being in the top 25 right now. They were really bad last year. And I know Venables has hit the recruiting trail hard, and I know they had a quarterback out. I get all that. But I'm cool with them not being in there. I'm cool with Aggie not being in there. I don't think they're a top 25 team. They may end up being, both those schools may end up being top 25 teams, but if you're looking at what expectations should be, I don't know. I don't think you can have them up there. And if you're going to bring in some weird teams like Illinois, like if you're going to not have Oklahoma, you're going to not have TCU, you're going to not have K-State, you're going to not have A&M, why not like a South Carolina who went on just a vicious run last season at the end of the season? I mean, if South Carolina can play how they did late last season, they're going to be, I mean, I don't think they're like a college football playoff contender or anything. I don't even think they're an SEC contender. But they're like a team you don't want to play. They're a top 25 team. What about Miami? I know they didn't have a great season last year, but Mario Cristobal's been recruiting his ass off too. We should start a petition to ban Brett McMurphy from ever being able to submit a top 25 AP poll ever again. That needs to happen. I don't think it's going to happen, though. I think he has a lot of fans. I don't. Or maybe people just follow him because he's stupid. Like I said, I haven't been on Twitter that long. Come visit with us on Tuesday. We're going to break down Week 9 opponent BYU. Looking forward to that game. There's a lot of cool games for Texas this year in the Big 12. Maybe we'll have some recruiting updates. Maybe some dominoes will fall. We'll definitely have some fall camp updates. I believe Texas has their first scrimmage on Saturday, their first sort of little fall scrimmage thing. So there'll definitely be some stuff coming out of that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, or go to Buzzsprout, search for Horn Takes Podcast. Subscribe. Find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. You can follow me there. I'm pretty active on Twitter now, and I'm fairly active on TikTok as well. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your comments, questions, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em.